Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Bryan from tekRESCUE. I'm here with John Kumley from Pacific Cloud IT. We're so glad that you're watching today, and we're going to talk today about securing your remote workers. What about bring your own device? But before we get into it, I want to encourage you, if you're watching, go ahead and like this video, or at whatever point you feel like you liked it, click on that like button. Also, subscribe if you're on one of our platforms that you can subscribe on. And also be sure to share it out to your friends. We would really appreciate that. Before we get into it, though, I want to introduce John. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent over here. It's finally starting to cool down in Oregon, and I feel like you can go outside and it doesn't feel like Arizona. So it's been nice getting out here and working with people in cybersecurity in the community. So today, I just wanted to kind of summarize a little bit of what this series, what we've been doing about. We have been wanting to talk about remote workers. Why are we talking about remote workers? Because more people are starting to leave their offices and transition to home. And with that, there comes security concerns. We've talked a little bit about a variety of things for the last couple of weeks. And so today, I think we're going to be focusing on bringing your own device policy. But why we need to do this? We want to tell more, Andy?
Yeah, so bring your own device is basically it's when a company doesn't when you don't use a company device and you're I mean literally like what it says. You're bringing your own device. So whether it's your MacBook or you've got like a really cool gaming computer that you want to use or whatever, and it's just as simple as letting employees use their own device. And the thing is, it's extremely popular. I think we got a few reasons. Why do you think it's so popular?
Well, I think it's popular because some companies don't really want to buy devices for every single person. So they're saving costs and people are used to their own laptop. They're like, I'm working from home already. I kind of want to use my own stuff. And companies like, well, that's going to save us money. So let's just give you the opportunity to give you some access to our company stuff from your own personal computer. So I think
Yeah,
it's really popular that way.
yeah, and then I would say that it's funny because there's also people that are real snobby, like myself, about their own devices. Like, when I right click on the desktop, I want to get a menu to pop up right away. If I have to wait like 2 seconds, like more than like once a week, I like start to lose it. I mean, I have a specific standard, that I like to have. And I think there's a lot of people that, maybe they're not as weird about it as I am or you are, you know what I mean? But like, that still have kind of the same standards. They don't want to use a crappy old work laptop, if you will. They want to use something that they like, they're comfortable with, has all their own apps, blah blah blah. So it's huge popular. And the thing is, if we're going to allow it, there's which it's up to a company to decide. Like, I don't think a company should not decide, because then they're opening themselves up to all kinds of risk, right? So a company's going to need to basically, they need to consider some things before they have a BYOD policy. Or, what would they do? What would they need to consider? A, and then B, like, what if a company's already using BYOD devices? What should they do? What should we consider if we're already doing it or we're thinking about doing it?
Well, I think if you're going to consider bring your own device, you need to actually have a policy put in place. You need to get the people that are all your decision makers together and decide what is that going to look like, or talk to your provider, IT, and kind of get together and ultimately come up with a policy that all your employees are going to follow.
So would on that policy, would that be like, do you just issue that? Or would it be something that we'd be better off like having, like, A, would you issue it and like, put it in the company manual? Or B, would it be better if you had people sign off on it? You know, like you send them a, you know, through Proposify or something like that, or all the above. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that if an employee is going to access your secure data, that they should be signing an agreement, some sort of policy or contract that they ultimately are going to be held to by using the device. If things happen with their security, if they have more security standards put on them, they're going to agree to that. So they're realizing, hey, this is my device, but when I'm accessing company data, it is becoming partly a company device.
So that's it. So that's I think kind of a great segue into one of the things that really has to be considered. So we're thinking about, do we want to have it or not? You know, we're going to have employees sign off on it. Another thing we really have to consider is our company data, because literally that's the risk. That's like the main risk with everything that we're talking about here. You know, you don't want an employee to have an insecure device, and if they have an insecure device, then a bad actor could gain access to that insecure device, and then that bad actor could gain access to your data. They could either A, encrypt the data and try to keep it from you, or B, release that data on the dark web for sale, you know, hold you ransom, literally, in either one of those scenarios. And if they do that, then you'd have to pay a ransom. I mean, and the data is what's really important here. So I want to bring up a great point with that said, is modern technology does allow for your data to basically have a fence around it, on a, you know, I would never put it on an insecure device, but at least on a device that belongs to an employee. Like for specifically Microsoft 365, you can set up policies in Microsoft 365. I don't think you can do this on the GoDaddy version. Nothing against GoDaddy, but I'm talking about the full-blown version of Microsoft 365. On that, you can set up policies in Intune, Endpoint Manager, where your data stays within certain apps, where then you have control. Like, I have a BYOD phone. I'm not able to copy and paste data out of that. I'm not able to take a presentation that I'm giving. I'm not able to put it onto a thumb drive, because that data is kept inside that walled garden, if you will, to try to give it a little bit more protection. What have you heard about that, or is that something that you are implementing anywhere?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So that's with, we use the endpoint manager as well for our clients. And the way we see it is, yes, we need to give them access and secured access. We also want the data to be able to remove from their device in case they no longer work there. And that's another concern is, and benefit to having the 365 infrastructure is you can remove the data as easily as you can put it right on. So you want to make sure that it also, what if they got hacked? How can you remove access? So 365 has a number of tools built in to either to control how your data flows around your company, and if it can be accessed from the outside world.
Awesome. So I think we want to look at, is there a trade-off or a playoff between your minimum stack required, and or if they can't go to that, do they use a company device? So here's my thoughts on that. If they're going to use an employee device, there needs to be some kind of a minimum stack, wouldn't you say?
I agree.
And what would be like some things that would be in consideration on that minimum stack?
Well, I think you need to make sure that their email that they're sending out through their device is encrypted. I think you need to make sure that their data, of course, is encrypted. I mean, access controls. I think we talked about zero trust last week. I think you really need to have a zero trust infrastructure put on these devices so that data can't be accessed from the outside world. You have to verify their identity, and you have to have tools. I mean, antivirus, you have to be able to look for breaches. There's a number of different security tools that you can put on a machine to keep it secure. I think the minimums, though, is you need to have their data encrypted. You need to have something that's actively searching for the bad guys, and probably multiple things looking for bad guys all the time, 24/7, because this stuff could happen on the weekend. It could happen on the holidays. And so you have to have something that's really keeping you secure. That's what we're seeing a lot in the world. So I think you have to have a minimum stack that can do all of those things. Ask your insurance company when you renew for cybersecurity insurance, and they'll probably give you what you kind of need in that minimum stack.
Yeah, and I think as as a company comes up with that minimum stack, you want to work with your IT department, your IT provider who is cybersecurity focused. And as you come up with that stack, then you need to say, okay, in our policy, here's the XYZ stack that you need to have if you're going to use a BYOD device, or I think you need to offer them the option of a company device at that point. What are your thoughts on that? So we've got a stack, it's required. And if they, for whatever reason, they don't want to do that, we run into that a lot, especially when the pandemic first started, when you had people that were, panicking how to get out of the office because they hadn't been watching the news. They didn't know it was coming. And, Monday morning, they all of a sudden had to figure out a way to work from home, March 15th or whenever that was, 19th. I don't know the exact date in your state. It was around that time in Texas. I think it was before St. Patty's Day. But bottom line is, we ran into like all kinds of people like, well, this is my personal laptop. I'm going to be, remoting into the office, if you will. I don't want you to put your stuff on my computer. So what are your thoughts on that minimum requirement, or they have to use a company device? And then if they have to use a company device, does the company need to be providing that company device? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that ultimately you got to really look at your employees and kind of say, hey, are you going to do what we want you to do? I think that requiring people to use their own device is not, at least in my state, I feel is not something that's ethical. I think that you need to have the option. If they want to keep their stuff private, you shouldn't force them to be under your security. So I think that you need to offer the option for a company device like we always have in the past. I mean, if it's a laptop, you got to send it home with them. So if they want to use their own device, yes, there's a policy. Yes, they're now going to be limited. But if you give them a company device, you can enforce that all you want. And it's truly that separation between work and their personal stuff.
Right. And that's, that's an issue that my own company that we have worked through and are working through, especially when you're dealing with people that are artists, maybe that have their own set of software that they like to use, or people that are, other creative types. We're going to run into that specific issue. So it's definitely it's something that you've got to consider as you're thinking out your bring your own device policy. So I guess you're saying, and I would agree with you. I feel like if you're going to force a certain stack, you just need to offer a company device, and then that way you can do whatever that you want on it. So, another thing that's come up recently, and this is not a new thing. We've had virtual cloud-based devices available for years and years and years and years. Okay. But recently, and all it is, if it's a cloud-based device, like you could literally have, 20 years ago, you could have where people could VPN to the server at the office and get on their desktop from that server, called terminal services back in the day, remote desktop services. I think it's what they call it now. You can still do that. A cloud-based PC is not much different, except instead of on your server, it's on Microsoft's server or, some other company that provides. But the question that has come up, because recently Microsoft rolled out cloud PC, Windows 365. I've heard it called a couple things. I think they're going with Windows 365, but I even saw a Windows 365 cloud PC on one of their pages. But the question is that more secure? And I'm concerned about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we all kind of knew this is where things were heading. I mean, why are they doing this? Really, ultimately, if we have the power somewhere else, we can make computers even cheaper and cheaper. And we can access that power somewhere else. Use the internet, basically, to get a computer. As far as security, ultimately, I think it's the issue is your device that's accessing this cloud PC 365, is that secure? Because if somebody can access your computer and just start using it while you're accessing that cloud PC, yeah, you may log in with your password, but they're able to see what you're doing. And then when you just walk away, they can just go in there and do the same thing. So I think that it's important to know if you're accessing these other desktops, the other computers, you need to have security on the computer that you're actually accessing it on. So I think that it can have some more security simply because, hey, that Cloud 365, that could have a two-factor authentication on it. You could do a couple things on it to make it a little bit more secure for accessing it. But ultimately, I think that there is some security risks based on the computer you're accessing on.
Right. And that's the bottom line I don't think that it's any different than, like an HVAC company used to have ServiceNow running on their server, and most of them that we deal with now have it running in the cloud. And yes, someone else is now handling security and all that stuff, but ultimately, if your device you're accessing your data with on the cloud, if the device is not secure, then you're going to be at risk. And if you have an employee from their own computer accessing a cloud PC, to me that the computer that's doing the accessing still needs to be just as secure as the cloud PC that you're accessing. So I'm having trouble from a security standpoint, seeing how that's more secure. But I can see from a convenience standpoint, that it would be. So if you're using some kind of a situation where you have cloud PCs or remote desktop services set up, you still have to consider, if they're using a BYOD device, you still have to consider security for that, which I think is the bottom line on that, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, definitely it's better than remote desktop connections. But when really writing this policy, there's some talk about privacy. Ultimately, like, what can the company see? Like, if it's on my own device, ultimately, like, can you now see what websites I'm going to? Can you see what I'm doing on my own personal time? And who sees that information? These are just some things that honestly employees, and I mean, all of us are considered. We all think about privacy right now. Are people spying on us and stuff like that? Do you want your company to spy on you? What could happen? What are some of the risks if the company isn't seeing what you're doing on your own device? What do you think, Randy?
So this has got to be written up in the BYOD policy, I think, for a ton of reasons. From a company standpoint, you need to have a well-written paragraph or bullet points or whatever that say, the company's not interested in your private data. We don't want to look at that. But that said, your private data will be analyzed by AI. And then if AI can't deal with it, it's going to be brought to the attention, of a human at some point. Whether that is a security officer, a security operations center, a little bit of both. You know, IT companies are kind of like doctors, if you will. You know, doctors know all your private information. They know all kinds of stuff about you, and it's no big deal. That's what they do all day long. It goes in one eye, out the other, in one ear, out the other. And as IT providers, we are the same way. So, you know, maybe that policy says that data is only going to be analyzed by the IT provider, you know, and then ultimately the company doesn't see that data, just the cybersecurity provider and not the actual company. But so there's that privacy, there's that matter from a privacy standpoint. You know, if the software finds a game on there that could reveal some kind of private information about the person, you don't want that being shared, you know, with the company. Like if the company has one particular political viewpoint and the employee has another, and they've downloaded some game thinking they're going to play, you know, opposite political viewpoint, you know, hilarity. That's the name of the game. Sorry, just made it up. It's stupid. But let's say it has an infection in it, or it has some sort of vulnerability, and that then gets reported to the security team. You don't want that getting shared back to the company, because that could then maybe cost them their job or something. I would hope not. You know, I would hope that a company's open to all political viewpoints, but you know, that particular company in this example, maybe they're not. Those are the kind of privacy issues that we have to, you know, put in writing so the employee doesn't have to worry about that. You know, the employee doesn't have to worry about, you know, is something I do on my private time, which is none of my company's business. It's not illegal, so it's none of my company's business. You know, is that going to be kept just between me and the security company, or is that going to be shared back with my employer? So I think those are all the ones I can think of.
Yeah, and I think that we were kind of talking about this earlier. I think even within the security company, you really have a security officer. And that security officer is the only one that ever sees these things. So it's not really shared around at all. It's very private. It's simply case by case, whitelisting, approving things, you know, so that people can kind of use have their personal freedoms, but also keep themselves secure. It can be kind of a hang up, you know, to get blocked from doing things that you think are going to be just fine. So those are just kind of things that you can expect, though, when you have this bringing your own device to use it. So you kind of have to do some compromise.
Right. Good stuff. So, and that's about all I have. Any other comments you wanted to add about BYOD?
Well, you know, it's in high demand. It's not really practical, but I think if you have good policies in place, it's going to work. So definitely take it under consideration. I think when you're working through these policies, making decisions in your organization, working from home, all of that stuff is, hey, do I want to go through the headaches for bring your own device policy, or I'm just going to ship out some laptops that ultimately are company devices, so I don't have to worry about all this and privacy and everything else. But the good news is there are people like Randy and I that can help you out with these questions. And if you have any questions, you can just, you know, leave a comment or anything like that, or reach out to us personally, and we'd be happy to help you develop some of these policies.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we're always available. If you have questions or comments about any of this stuff, you know, this is what we do for a living, but on the other side of that coin, we also love helping and educating and getting the word out about this stuff. So, you know, bottom line is we're here. If you need anything, reach out. We'd love to help. So, why don't you take us on out of here and let everybody know how thankful we are they showed up today.
Yeah. Well, I thank you guys all for showing up today, and we're excited. We're going to do, we're going to do one next week, possibly, right? I think.
Yes.
We're going to be in Austin, Texas. So we may have to skip a week because we're going to be learning more about cybersecurity and stuff like that, all getting together. But if we have some time next week, we might do it, and otherwise it'll be the week after. All right.
Maybe we can do it live from the top of some building somewhere.
We can do that. Oh yes. There might be a pool there too. That'd be interesting. All right. Thank you, Randy.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See y'all later.